Beyond the Lens, an exclusive with India's cinematic genius.
Well, from the serene waters of the Bulgur Lake to the busy streets of Colombo, Sri Lanka has always been a beautiful, beautiful backdrop for some of the most incredible stories. And today I am sitting with someone whose work has touched so many hearts across the globe. And she is Oscar-nominated film director and film producer Deepa Mehta. And Deepa Mehta is once again in Sri Lanka. So thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's such a high for me to be back here in Sri Lanka because I consider it not only the home for three of our films, Water, Midnight's Children, Funny Boy, but also the savior of our films, which has been so important for them because you can get to a place and not only does it meet all your expectations, but it inspires you more. That's what Sri Lanka is for me. It's more.
Well, Deepa has asked me to be unpredictable with this interview today. So before we get into all the unpredictabilities, I'm going to ask a very predictable question from you. Deepa, tell me, are you back in Sri Lanka to shoot again? Because we'd love to see one of your gems being shot in Sri Lanka once again.
Yes, in fact, David Hamilton, who's my producer, and myself, and three of our partners in Canada are ready to shoot here. And in fact, we're going to be meeting the people that we've always worked with here, Gopi and Errol Kelly, who's just brilliant. And we're going to be doing another film called Sher. Okay. I hope we're going to be doing it here. This is depends on Sri Lanka, and I'm so excited about it. And I have to drop a name. The person who is attached to play the lead is Jeremy Irons, and so I'm so excited.
All right, and is Deepa able to spill a little bit more tea about Sher? What is it about? A little bit of the storyline, maybe?
A little bit.
Okay.
I have to keep it mysterious.
Yes, of course.
It's okay. I'm not good at mystery. It's about Watson after Holmes has died.
Okay.
And he comes here to do a reading of his book, and he's really at the end of it all. And he finds out that Holmes' illegitimate daughter is here, and it's how they solve a mystery that's set here and in the tea estate, so Norelia, right? So we hope to see that and hope to film there.
Well, I would say a lot of Deepa Mehta stories come with a bit of controversy, come with a bit of taboo topics and things that people at this time of the day would love to watch and learn about. So when you think of stories like that, we're very glad that you also think of Sri Lanka as a place that could be used to shoot stories like that as well. So especially with Water, when you thought about the storyline and with choices like India, what made you think, okay, Sri Lanka is a place that I could actually take this movie to, take this story to, and it'll be the perfect place to shoot this? What was your thought process like?
Well, when Water ran into some problems in India, and we decided to shut it down. Yeah. And there were many provinces in India who were horrified by what had happened to us and invited us to film in Calcutta, Madhya Pradesh, and there were many other provinces that were really hospitable and would have been wonderful. But I remember going to some of them, and David Hamilton, who's my producer and my partner, saying, why aren't you making up your mind where you want to shoot it? And I said, I remember staying very distinctly feeling that I was too angry by what had happened to us in Varanasi, and to take that anger and put it into a film was not right. So we actually postponed shooting the film. And after about 5 years, I think, my brother, who's a photographer, still photographer, said to me, have you checked out Sri Lanka? Because it has no history of what happened to you and Water. And it's so beautiful, maybe seek it out. And that's David and myself, with the leap, came here, and we fell in love with it. And we met Errol Kelly and we met Gopi, and Errol, who's a local brilliant production designer, and Gopi, who's a fabulous line producer, took us to places that just blew us away, which felt so right for water. That's why it happened.
And then how did the process go? Did your team come down? What was the process for the casting like? Were there tell us about the Sri Lankans involved, especially because it's a privilege to work with icons like this. And
I don't know about that. That's very kind of you to say. But the lead of Water is an 8-year-old girl, and that girl is a Sri Lankan girl, and her name is Sarala. And we did a lot of in India and here. We did a lot of auditions with different young girls. And with Sarala, I didn't even need to do an audition. I met this little girl with 2 long braids, a tiny dress, and she was 8 years old. And I said to her in English, because I don't know Sinhala, and I said, just if your father's leaving you somewhere, how would you feel? And it turned out that she didn't understand a word of English. So it was translated for her, and before I knew it, she'd caught hold of my leg and she was screaming, "I don't want to go." And I thought, oh my God, this is it. So it was Sarala. It's a Sri Lankan, wonderful young actor, a total natural, who became the lead of Water. And she learned every word, because the film is in Hindi. She learned it all.
wow.
I mean, she's brilliant, and I hope when we see Water, she's going to come down and be with us.
Of course. Well, while you speak about shooting and what it was like in front of the camera, we'd like to know what happened behind the scenes as well. When you chose the Bolgoda Lake, when you all thought about, Ganges is such an important part of the movie, and when you all were picking out places and you all were like, okay, this part of Sri Lanka, this is the place, because it was a shift from Varanasi to Sri Lanka, right? So when you all were thinking about very important factors like that, what were the behind the scenes like to actually put things into perspective, and the set? Can you tell us about that as well?
Yes, I can. Behind the scenes of every film is very unlike what happens in front of the film, as you so succinctly put it. And it was very obvious being with Dileep and with Errol, who is both of them great production designers, that it was impossible to try and create Varanasi here or in front of any river or by the side of any river. So we decided that we would not be replicating Varanasi. It would be a small town on the Ganges. There are many such small towns all over India, and that's what we did. And it was Errol and Dileep who designed that town. It was very minimal, and we wanted it to be so realistic that it wouldn't feel as if it was made up. And there was a minimum quality to it which was superb. And in fact, it was really strange. One day I came to set early and I saw boats, like number of boats filled with people, so going by our set. And I asked Errol, I said, what's happening? And he says they're tourists who think that this is a small town. And this is how realistic it was that people would start coming there.
So was the transformation easy?
It was totally easy.
Wow. All right. While we speak about the serious things, I want you to tell me what do you all think was the most easygoing or the fun part of shooting Waters? I know because behind every serious part of the movie and the emotions, there's always like the funny memories and the memories that you all make in Sri Lanka. So tell me, what was the best part of shooting in Sri Lanka, Deepa?
The film itself was not. It wasn't funny. But it was very satisfying.
Yeah. Okay,
and it's not a funny film. There are light moments in it.
Yeah.
But for me, what was amazing was your weather here. It was so unpredictable. We'd say, okay, we're going to do this scene, and John Abraham, who plays the male lead in the film, is going to be crossing the river, and suddenly it would start pouring. And instead of saying, okay, we'll wait for it to stop raining, this is your wonderful weather here. And we said, no, let's go with it. And so your weather actually dictated our ability to maneuver and manipulate what we were thinking, which was wonderful. Suddenly the sun would shine, and the cinematographer, the cameraman, who's also an Academy-nominated cameraman, Giles Nutkins, would say, "No, let's just go with it." It was wonderful, and the places we saw.
Amazing. All right, and to the most important part of that movie, Academy Awards. When you all were nominated, tell us the emotions, tell us how you all felt, and what was the process like? Because it's not always that foreign films with topics like this get recognized on an international stage, and when it gets recognized, it's pride brought into everything that's involved in it. So what were the emotions running through everyone who were part of the movie?
I think with water, a country has to nominate their film for the Academy Awards. And it was the first time that Canada actually nominated a film that was not in English nor in French, which are the official languages of Canada, and said, no, water is our film. So for me, that was the most important part, because it was a recognition that Canada is made up of immigrants who are as important as their citizens. So to nominate water was a huge leap for all of us brown people in Canada, because it was not in French or English.
What was the support like?
There was no support. I mean, the producer, the director, who is an amazing guy, said we should put it up for nomination, and then there's a board, I don't know who they were, who decided that this was the film that would represent Canada. And in fact, it's the same thing that happened with Funny Boy, because again, it was not a film that's set in Canada. It's partly in Sinhalese, it's partly in Tamil, very little in English, and it was again Canada's nomination for the Academy Awards. So when you're recognized by a home, it's so much more relevant, I think, for me, it was, than on a world stage. Yes, it's very exciting to be nominated for the Oscars, and we had a fabulous American distributor. Fox Searchlight is huge, and then suddenly we were, little Saralais on the cover of Variety, and all that, and it was wonderful, because it's a film that I really believe in. It's a film about somebody who is not in the mainstream of society, like maybe Brandon Ingram always says that Deepa, you make films about the other. And it's true. Yeah, he sort of nailed it when he said that, because it is about the other. It's about women who have been dismissed and who really end up by being the foundation of our society.
At a time like this, when people are always on phones, and it's like Instagram and Facebook and Reels and TikTok and all of that stuff, people don't think, they always go back to the mainstream equipment to get something big done. But when you all shot the movie, why did you all think it's okay to do it on the phone?
It was, I Am Seerat is a very important film for me, because it's based on a trans person in Delhi who I'd worked with earlier, and I see Seerat all the time when I come back to India. And about 3 years ago, she said, when we met, she said, she calls me mother, and she said, Ma, why don't you do a film about me? So I said, why Seerat? And she said, I'm trans, and I have such a difficult time convincing my mother to recognize who I am, and I don't want to hurt her. So at home, I am the man that she gave birth to, and once I leave the house, I become the person that I want to be, and I feel I am, which is a woman. And I thought, and she said, it would be wonderful, because my mother loves seeing films. Maybe if she saw it, she'd understand who I really am. So that's what happened. But there was no way that we were going to get funding from Canada or from the UK for something that was so intimate. And I wanted it to be intimate. I wanted it to be something that Seerath and myself both did together, because it's her, the film belongs to her. And the only way we could do it without a huge crew or light and camera, I mean, look at all of you here, that's huge, right? Very, very professional. We didn't have that luxury, and I'm really glad we didn't, because intimacy sometimes happens with minimum crew. So we didn't have a crew. Seerath shot most of it, I shot the other half, and I shot her, and she shot me being the director, and I shot her being the storyteller. And an assistant of mine, Maithili, did some of the shooting. We actually edited it in Canada, and then CBC saw it, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and said that they loved it. So there you go, you know. You do something because you feel passionate about it. Funny Boy was done because we all, not only the director and the producer and the cinematographer, but the amazing cast and the locality of this amazing country made it possible. It's passion that should drive you, not what you think is going to make you get a nomination or something.
Yes, of course. And with Funny Boy, while you shot it in Sri Lanka, I'm sure since the story is based off Shyam Savaduri's beloved novel, when you all chose the place again, what was it in the novel that dragged you all back here?
I've known Shyam, who's Canadian and a Sri Lankan, and I've known him for many years. And when the book first came out, which is what, 10 or 12 years ago, I don't know, I read it and I rang up Shyam and I said, I really like it. Would you consider it for me to option it to make it into a film? And he said, I wish you'd asked me a week earlier, because I've just sold it to somebody in the United Kingdom. So I said, that's too bad. And we just moved on with our lives. And then about 4 years ago, I get a call from Shyam, and he said, I've done the script of Funny Boy. The people who were supposed to make it decided not to do it, and would you look at the script and tell me how you feel? So I read the script, and I'd loved the book, and I said, it's terrific, but maybe we can work on the script together. And Shyam is a lovely guy, and he said, let's do it. And so that's how we did it. It's about wanting to do something so passionately, and it's a film that is very similar to another film that I've done that David and myself did called Earth, which is about sectarian war. And Shyam's book represents that, and it was really moving. What we do to the other, what makes somebody different than who we are. And there's something so emotionally moving about Shyam, because Shyam himself, his father is Tamil and his mother is Sinhalese, and it's like being divided. Can we come together? Can a country come together? Can children come together? And when they do, it's a miracle. So I'm so happy to see what's happening in Sri Lanka now. So go for it. Yeah.
Well, I think this is quite an apt time to ask this also, because we just completed a couple of decades after the Civil War, and this story is about, it links so much to the Civil War. So since you were able to shoot this movie in Sri Lanka, and you were able to actually use some of the real locations, instead of, like when we were talking about water, there was
recreate,
a set, yes, yeah. Recreate. There was transformation process. Here, you had the option of taking up, real locations and doing it in a much more like a real way. So, how was working on that like?
It was fabulous, because obviously there's some passages or some scenes in the film, and the areas that they were filmed in that don't exist anymore. They just don't. I mean, yeah. That's the reality of it. The house that Shyam lived in, and the character that that he played is based on him. It doesn't exist. It's not there. It's been many years, and so it was to find something that was similar to what existed, 30 years ago, whatever. It was wonderful, because again, Sri Lanka, there's something that's so beautiful about what Sri Lanka can offer. And I've filmed in many other countries in the world, but this is, and I'm not trying to suck up to you guys. It's rare that there's so many options. Whether you go to, we went to Kandy, went to many places, that things are so different, and you can go to an area of Sri Lanka which I didn't know existed. Which is, friends talk about it, and they said, you go up and you travel and you sit up on the rocks. I think Brandon was telling me about somebody who does that, and somebody from NPR I know who stayed in the forest. And you've had wonderful books written about places like this. So it's very rare. And then it's not just the locality, it's also the people. So you can get amazing talent here, which is not always so. I've been given an option many times. Why don't you shoot in the Maldives? There are many people who look like Indians there. Or shoot in Thailand, and there's so many immigrants there. But there's something about Sri Lanka which feels very authentic. Not that it's trying to be Indian, it is very Sri Lankan. And I think in that solidarity, magic can happen.
Very beautifully said, Deepa. And of course, when you mentioned, I actually got goosebumps listening to you talk about my country. So I think that's beautiful. And at the same time, putting up, when you talk about diversity, I think that's exactly what we had to offer that you took. And you beautifully portrayed it in your movies, especially by bringing out the languages. Like you said, there was barely any English. It was Sinhala. Sinhalese was given a chance. The Tamil language was given a chance. Yeah. So when there's so much to cater, and you actually, there's like variety in your movie, and you put all of them together as well, how are you kind of able to put that creative vision together? How does the planning work?
I don't know. I must be a sucker for punishment. I don't know. I just do it. There's no great plan that, okay, I'm going to do this. I have a great producer. David is fabulous. And film is collaborative. I don't sit there writing a book by myself. I don't paint by myself. I need a team to put it together. So you need the talent who will make the characters alive. You need the actors. You need a cinematographer who can capture what you want. You need a production designer who understands the value of the colors that you want to catch in your film. What was for me, the color palette of Sri Lanka was always a deep yellow. I felt it was like the sunrise and the sunset. So you need a production designer who knows that. You need a producer, line producer, who will make a plane available here so you can shoot that. So it is totally collaborative. Cinematography, production design, of course the talent, and somehow it's my job as a director in these films at least to bring it all together to make the film. But you can't do it on your own. You really can't.
And that's why teamwork counts a lot.
It does, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm a great team leader, but I think I'm an okay director. So I don't know.
Well, definitely others seem to think otherwise, and that's why you're such an icon after all. Well, it's very interesting to hear about the stories, your whole storytelling journey. So, something on the top of my mind is all of these stories that you bring out, they're very different to the usual movies and the stories. So when you think of, topics like water, like a fire, Funny Boy, and all of these stories, there's when people talk about it, is it like, I'm gonna do this, but there's gonna be controversy. People are gonna talk about it. What's the mind process like? Do you think about what people would say? What's the end goal of doing all of it?
I don't know. What comes to mind is I grew up with films. My father was a film distributor in India, and he owned movie theaters. And every Friday, and I saw, about 6 years old after school, we'd just go and pick up Dad and sit and watch a movie or something. And but I saw that every Friday dictated the mood of my father, which was, what was the box office? If the box office in his theaters was good, he'd be in a good mood, and if it wasn't, he would be not too happy. He would be quiet, and So I knew that as I was growing up, this was the last thing I wanted to do, was to have anything to do with film, which dictated where the box office felt, dictated what the box office would make me feel. And so I did philosophy, and I did my master's in philosophy, and I was applying to do my PhD in a school of Indian philosophy when I was asked by a friend to come and help in a small documentary film school that they did, not a school, a place, and I did that, and I really quite liked it. They'd asked me to help to answer the phone, and after 2 days, Anil Srivastava, who's my friend, called me over and he said, "Deepa, you're really lousy at the reception. You're so rude. You will never ever make it." So I said, "Okay, I tried to help anyways." And he said, "But why don't you learn? You're here. While you're waiting to see if you're going to get in your PhD program, while you're here, why don't you learn how to edit film?" So that's how I learned. I never went to film school. I learned how to edit, do sound, do cinematography, all in this little place. And when I told my parents that I wanted to be a filmmaker, my mother was very happy. She said, "Good, that sounds really good." But my father was quiet. He said, "If you want to do it, keep two things in mind. One is, as human beings, we will never know when we are going to die. And the other is, we will never know how a film will be received." And that has always stuck to me, and that brings me back to your question. I don't do a film because I'm thinking about how will it be received, will it be controversial, will it not? I don't give a damn. But what I do care about is what makes me curious about a subject. What I cared so much about Fire was about how a lesbian relationship would be received in India at that point. What I cared about Earth was sectarian war. How do countries divide? That was exactly what happened with Funny Boy. It's curiosity that drives me. I don't want to do a film in which, when I'm trying to put it together, that I don't learn what I'm curious about.
And has this journey of storytelling changed Deepa Mehta as a person?
I think I'm becoming more like my father. I don't know.
And that's a good thing, we believe?
I think so, because he was very realistic. And also, he was the one, when I was about 7 years old, and I was sitting in his movie hall seeing an old Bollywood film or something, and he took me, and I asked him, I said, "I can't smell anything, these people aren't real, but why am I crying?" And he took me to the projection room. I held my 35mm camera film, and took me and walked me down the aisle and made me feel the screen. And somewhere in there was his love for cinema, So I feel like I was a Punjabi cinema paradiso, it was really magical.
Punjabi cinema parody. That's a nice way to put it. So thank you very much, Deepa, for sitting down with us. We're really happy that you're back in Sri Lanka, and fingers crossed, hopefully, that next film will be from Sri Lanka that we could be so proud of all over again. So thank you so much for all of the work you've done to bring pride to our country, and of course your work, the taboo topics that must be brought out and spoken about. We're very glad that you're back in Sri Lanka. We hope you enjoy your stay, and we have so much more to expect during this time as well. So thank you for sitting down with us once again.
My pleasure, and your unpredictable questions were very interesting, as was the rest of your interview.
Of course, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, that was a News First exclusive with the Oscar-nominated film director and film producer Deepa Mehta. Thank you very much for sitting down with us. We'll see you again with another News First exclusive. Until next time, I'm Mariam Ganavijaya.
Beyond the Lens, an exclusive with India's cinematic genius.